And live. Okay, cool. I have to wait for my little timer to start in the corner so I know.
Oh,
Episode 51. I'm here with the folks of Readys Rainforest, and I put in the little blurb like I usually do when I want to talk about folks that I'm going to interview. Uh, I was super interested to talk to you guys in part because you were referred to me from the Reptile Gumbo folks and the Herps Show folks and everybody on that circuit. You're the chameleon people they refer me to. So that was really cool. And I really like seeing what you guys are doing on your social media. It's really awesome, the chameleons that you produce. But I put in there that I have actually interviewed someone who does chameleons in Pennsylvania. And
yeah.
so I was very interested to hear about the differences in keeping them in different parts of the country because a lot of folks, when they think about chameleons, they're advanced, quote unquote, they're more difficult and all these different things. And then you talk to certain keepers and they're like, oh, I have this system, it works great, I'm good to go. You guys have an awesome setup behind you that looks super great, and then you talk to somebody in a different part of the country and none of those things match, or these parameters are different, or things change just because of where they live. I thought it was really cool that I had seen, for following your social media and seeing the show circuit and things like that, I had seen your successes, and they're very similar to other folks who live in totally different environments in the United States. So I was very interested to hear about that. Um, but there's a bunch of stuff. So to start out, can you guys introduce yourselves and let us know what Readys Rainforest does?
Go.
My name is Amanda Reddy. So Reddy is our last name, and that's why we chose Ready's Rainforest. And then this is
I'm Lee Ready. Uh, I handle a lot of the technical things, I guess, and raising the chameleons as far as like gut load, nutrition, stuff like that.
he's into more of like supplements and really getting all that stuff more than me. I'm basically the caregiver of everybody, and I like to work with each animal individually to get them handleable and lovable, and I feed them every day, but he's the one that makes sure that they're as healthy as they can be.
Very cool. That's a very specific division of labor.
Yeah.
And and when I talk to folks that keep animals like chameleons, um, I don't necessarily think chameleons are advanced, whatever that means. I think chameleons take, or things like chameleons, they just take more time or like more attention, right? Like a snake or something, people feed once a week, keep it clean, it's all good. Lizards are always more involved than snakes. It's just kind of their thing. And then you start to talk about something like chameleons, it's every day. I check my timers, I have my lights and misters. It's just more detail, I suppose. And
Uh,
so,
yeah, I mean, that's really like what we try to tell people, and they're like, oh no, they're too hard, and it's like, no, really, it's not that they're hard, they're just specific.
mhm,
It's like you can't put an isopod in sand, so you couldn't put a chameleon in an aquarium,
right,
so it's like that's really all it is just those few little certain things that have to be done for them versus yeah, a snake that lives in a drawer, and
right.
eats once a week. It's like, yeah, these when they're adults you can go every other day, every couple of days, because it is still a reptile, so it can handle a little bit of offhands, but yet they do have to have the misting and all that stuff and the lights, whereas like a snake is in a drawer. So
For sure.
but basically we try to tell people they can be automated. You can, if Miss King, going off twice a day for you, the lights come on and off for you. Really, the only thing that you're doing is feeding them. So
Mhm.
it can be automated, just not anything like a snake.
Right. So, looking at your social media, because I'm a nerd for that, and uh,
You like to troll a little bit.
yeah, for sure. And I always think it's cool because, like, I don't personally know you guys, and the guests that I don't personally know, that's always how this happens. Like, my friends refer, like, oh, these people are cool. They do chameleon. Like, this is who you should check out, and that's how I find bunches of people. So if you scroll back far enough on your Instagram,
Yeah.
there's a point that says like getting back into the hobby, getting into reptiles, and before that, there's hot rods and other things that also interest me. So I kept scrolling. So at some point, going back in, living in Texas, though, you pick chameleons, end up going down this route. Why does it go that way? Why tropical? Why chameleons? What pushed you that way?
Honestly, chameleons was our first reptile. We never owned anything else before that other than your typical dog, cat,
Okay.
that type of thing. Chameleons was the first thing we even started with, and it was a panther chameleon. And I mean, if I went and told you the real full story, it was I walked into a PetSmart one day. They sell chameleons. Now, they're not panthers, they're veileds.
Yep.
But I saw one sitting in there and I thought, wow, that thing looks so cute. I didn't know that this even existed, and this was in like 2008, I think, something like that.
Okay.
And I went home and, I'm a Capricorn, he's a Capricorn. So we researched all that, figured it out, found a really good breeder.
That makes you good nerds, though. That's good.
Yeah, we're big time. Yeah. It takes us, sometimes 3 or 4 days to purchase an item in our cart on Amazon. We're like, no, we got to research it more.
You sound very familiar.
Yeah, and it'll be something dumb. It's not even anything like it has to do with this. It'll be dumb, and it'll take us days to buy it. Yeah. But we've got a hold of a really great breeder that they're not in it anymore, but we ended up bringing home, they shipped us a little, 3-month-old chameleon, brown little stick, and the feet. If you've ever held a chameleon, the feet, I mean, that right there is like, oh my God, the way their feet feel, they're holding you, they're so strong. And it was just, I have to have these animals.
Yeah, and then the localities of like panther chameleons really fascinated me. I've always been fascinated with like genetics, even through high school and stuff like that. It just interested me a lot. And then when we started getting into the chameleons, everybody's like, "Oh, you live in Texas? There, that's a desert." Well, it's not a desert.
It's actually very humid here.
Yeah, I mean, relative humidity in our house is like 40%. Is
okay.
And that's everybody's house. That's not just because we happen to have like misters going off all the time to create that. It's just, here in Texas, like it's humid out there right now today. I mean, it was shirts were sticking while we were hunting for eggs.
Okay.
And we live in North Texas, so not even South Texas. And it's pretty humid here. So it's like, I like to sell chameleons to people in the South because I'm like, we almost have the perfect condition for them. And you wouldn't think we do.
Minus the heat.
Minus the heat. Yeah.
Right.
But
for sure.
Wise, it's there. It helps you out a little bit.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. And our way of raising, I mean, we do things simple over here. And it's worked great for us for 14 years. I mean, we've changed with the times as far as like going from T8 bulbs to T5 bulbs. The high output T5 bulbs seem to do a lot better in the UVB index, the Ferguson zones.
For sure.
And then like supplementation has gotten way better. When we first got into it, it was Repcal with D3.
Yep.
Pink label, high IUs of D3 in there, and then Herptibite. And there was no preformed vitamin A's in that. A lot of people were getting vitamin A issues, and we weren't. And what I didn't realize I was doing, but I was making a dry gut load with preformed vitamin A's in it to feed the bugs, and then the bugs were consuming the preformed vitamin A and chameleons.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah, see, he likes that part.
Yeah.
Well, panther chameleons in general and then localities, and then just the idea for chameleons with insect feeders and gut load. Like if you are a person who enjoys the research aspect of it, like that's just such a rabbit hole that you can go down for
Oh yeah.
all those different things.
Yeah. Nutrition is, in our opinion, nutrition is the biggest key to their life. Is nutrition.
Yeah, the chameleon is actually very simple to take care of. They got basic needs. You meet those basic needs. Now, the bugs are a different story.
Yeah, I tell everybody the bugs are harder to take care of than the chameleon.
They are.
For sure.
The feeders are, they're a little more time consuming. You want to switch up the gut loads. You want to offer different nutritional values. You don't want to offer the same cheeseburger every day to an animal. You always want to be varying the diet, not just in feeder species, but also gut content, because that transfers to the chameleon.
So you guys post quite a bit about that, actually, which I thought was awesome. And how did you come to the dry mix that you use when you're gut loading along with like the fruits and vegetables and stuff?
So the dry mix, I talked with a guy. He helped us out a lot. After we got our first pair of chameleons, I got in contact with a guy that lived in Madagascar for like 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And he noticed that a lot of the chameleons' contents in their stomachs and stuff, when he'd find a dead chameleon, he'd do like a necropsy over there. And he saw a lot of grains and fibrous material in there. And he knows that they're not eating that directly because there was a lot of insects in there. Grasshoppers, their forms of crickets, beetles. And I started thinking about it, and I was like, well, they sell this cricket food, but it's really high in protein. It's not really nutritional. It's just meant to keep the cricket alive. What if I just take that and apply it to the chameleon's health instead? And so I was talking with the guy over there in Madagascar, and he was explaining, how some of the agricultural areas growing, the leafy greens, and they're surrounded by ocean, so there's like kelps and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm just going to kind of introduce a little bit at a time here and see how the animal reacts. And I vary that dry mix all the time, but I base it a little bit off our nutritional factors, what humans, what it's reading on the scales, and then what I think the chameleon would benefit from, like B vitamins, fat soluble vitamin A's, calcium, always high calcium. High calcium really isn't good for the bug, but it's great for the chameleon.
Right. Very cool.
And so that's how we kind of started doing the dry grain mixtures and stuff like that. And I try to post it up every once in a while when I do a new mix. I don't do it all the time. I should do it more. But I like to post pictures of what we're gut loading. So it helps people that maybe follow us or are
like somebody who's bought from us,
right,
even
bought from us, or somebody that's just out there looking at chameleons. They come across our page and they're like, oh, well, they're feeding something. Their chameleons look healthy. Great, take that idea and use it.
Yeah.
Because it's only gonna benefit the animal.
For sure. Very cool. Tiffany in the chat asked what that dry mix consists of.
So the base.
The base is going to be alfalfa leaves. That's usually 50% of the base. And then we'll do some bee pollen. You can do some seaweed or kelp. Try to find no salt. Brewer's yeast. Let's see, what else is there? There's
Dandelion.
Dandelion root, dandelion leaves, dried. And then hibiscus leaves and hibiscus flowers dried. You can purchase these. Some of it I dry myself, just so I know it's, you can buy organic and be safe. Then there's, let's see, I put a lot in that mix.
Yeah.
Like I already said, brewer's yeast.
Well, I do know you've posted a couple of recipes on Instagram as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And then there's like flaxseed. Flaxseed's a great fiber. You know, grind that up. Anybody, you can get flaxseed meal.
Hmm.
And then you can get some. I don't really like to do this because it makes it spoil quicker. But if you're making small batches, you can do some dried, non-salted vegetables or fruits
Okay.
in there to get the feeders really enticed to eat it. And as long as the nutritional value is there, I mean, if you're picking up a fruit and it's all it has is sugar listed on the nutritional values, don't feed it.
Right. Very cool. Like I said, lots of details, which I think is awesome.
But we end up scaring people, whenever
Yeah.
they come up and talk to us, because we can like spit it out, like word vomit to them, and they're like, wait, what? And we're like, look, you don't have to know this now. We're just telling you,
Right.
that you can know this for the future.
This is information we've collected over 14, 15 years of doing it.
For sure.
And a lot of it's just back to the basics, taking care of what takes care of the animal, which they're an insectivore. So take care of the bug, it takes care of the chameleon.
I always tell people, look at your bug as an empty pill pocket, just an empty capsule with nothing in it. So whatever you put into that bug is going to go into your animal. So the healthier that bug is, the healthier your animal is going to be.
Absolutely.
That's just the best way to look at it.
Nice. So you guys have posted a couple of videos putting together enclosures, and you have awesome looking enclosures behind you. And I know you talk quite a bit about you like to keep simplistic, keep things simple, easy to clean, that type of thing. And so like one of the most recent Instagram videos I was watching, you were using the fake plants from Michael's, easy to clean, dowel rods, very simple step-by-step instructions. What pushed you to go that way as opposed to live plants, so on and so forth?
We've actually never used live. Other than in the Parsons cage, which you might have saw in the really old Instagram post.
It did, and it was huge and awesome. Anyway.
Yeah. But no, we've never actually used live plants. We've always used fake. We consider ourselves sterile raisers, is what some people have coined the term, is we raise sterile, not naturalistic.
Okay.
And the main reason why we do that is because you want to worry about the animal, not the plants.
I want to take care of the animal, not the cage.
And some plants, people are like, oh, well, my hibiscus is dying. Well, because it's getting overwatered or it's getting underwatered, So now you're worried about the plant instead of the animal. Or it needs to be fertilized, but I can't use a fertilizer. Well, what do I use? You use crushed up pecans. That works really well. I know how to do it. I opt not to do it because I feel like the health of the animal is more important to me than taking care of a plant.
Yeah.
And I mean, now, if you're talking velds, velds do eat foliage.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not really a good thing. I personally think it's possibly some kind of deficiency is why it may be doing that. But panthers are not really known to eat plants. Some people have said they do, but I have never seen it out of having wild caught animals, captive bred animals. I've never seen them munching on the leaves. I think that honestly, that's a deficiency. They're looking for something that they're not getting. Or they're thirsty, and they're thinking, well, maybe there's some water on this leaf, that I can't see. But it's never happened to us. I mean, I'm not going to say it won't ever happen, but it hasn't yet. And we just like to be able, we do deal with wild caughts. Now we isolate them, but we want to be able to sterilize that cage during their treatment. And you can't do that to a live plant. I can't put, peroxide and bleach and boiling water on a live plant, like I can on a fake plant.
For sure.
And I'm this way, like in these cages, I can monitor these babies poop, make sure that everybody's, because the bottoms are paper towels,
Hmm.
and I can monitor, make sure everybody's doing okay, and everybody's looking good, and we run regular fecals on everybody. And it's like, what if that fecal matter fell into the dirt, and then some bug from the dirt or whatever got into it and then contaminated it, then I can't get a good fecal off of it.
Right.
And there's, pros to, fake plants. I think there's more pros than there are cons. It's just in the chameleon world, everybody thinks you have to have a live plant. And it's like, well,
It's not necessary.
It's not necessary.
I mean, each chameleon's different. And if your chameleon is chewing on plants, you need to look at your hydration, and you need to look at
your gut load,
your gut load, and your supplementation schedule.
Yeah.
Because more than likely, one of those three is going to be off.
Yeah, it's missing something in its diet.
But I mean, knock on wood. I mean, I've never had an impaction from fake plants.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I'm sure that's from random people having bad experiences and expressing it out into the community.
Yeah.
And I get, there is a risk, but there's a risk with live plants as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you can take organic soil and you mix it up, and then you have it in a potted plant, and like the Parsons we had back in the day, I do routine fecals on him. Well, one time I did a fecal sample. I picked it up out of the dirt out of his potted plant, and I floated it, and I saw a bunch of nematodes, roundworms in there. And I was like, well, this isn't right. He's been clean. And so what it was is, it wasn't a chameleon or a reptile nematode. It was a dirt type nematode for some other species.
Oh. Okay.
And so then it makes you second guess yourself, and you're running around and trying
And then
to.
it's like, what if you treat that animal and that medication ends up killing them? I mean, chameleons are so sensitive with medicine.
Yes, for sure.
Like, that if honestly, that's the hardest part about them, is they just don't tolerate medicine.
Well, most of it can be fixed without medicine.
Without medicine.
Other than parasites.
Yeah.
Parasites need to be ridded. I mean, now you are feeding bugs, so there is always the possibility of a reinfection, but their immune system, as long as you have a healthy chameleon, they can control that or rid it from their system.
For sure. And I did see in the video where you guys were putting together an enclosure, you were pretty specific with your plant choices, and you showed folks that you had some more cloth type, and that you preferred the more plasticky, shiny. And then you were talking about how, as you were using the misters, it helped with hydration, it collected water better, and different things. Is that trial and error thing? You just got that over time, that you found one type to be better?
Well, I mean, the silk plants, since they're under the UVB lights, those silk plants kind of, I guess, deteriorate almost, because it's like out in the sun,
Okay.
like your reef on your front door gets kind of like burnt looking,
Mm-hmm.
it breaks down. And we've just noticed that the more plastic type feeling tends to hold up a little bit better to like the lighting. And also then, we noticed that silk really, it almost absorbs water like a towel, versus leaving like little water droplets on the plastic,
Okay.
kind. And then, even like in these cages, some of them are kind of like little cups, that they kind of hold little water droplets, and the chameleons will go up and see it and, drink out of it almost like a little cup.
Very cool. So, speaking of the enclosures behind you and your setups, you guys also have posted that you kind of have progressed over time, and you showed some different setups from herp shows and different things that you've gone through, and kind of came to the setup we see behind you now. Is that something where, is that a specific brand that you prefer, or how did that come to be with that? Because it looks much narrow but deep and tall is what it looks like. It's behind you, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
So a friend of ours actually ordered these in, and
Okay.
I purchased a few from them just to try out, and I think I got 10 from them,
I think so in the beginning. Yeah.
and instantly saw a benefit from them. The chameleons were roaming around more. They were felt more secure. You know, they could go and hide if they wanted to because of the depth. You know, all the neonates and the young babies and stuff like that. They still have a fear because they're young. You know, everything is out to eat them. So I got these because I wanted to add more security, more safety for the babies. So as they grow, they still felt secure. You know, they eat, they drink. They did the same in the older, smaller enclosures, but this does a lot better. You know, and so that's the reason why. And it's Dragon Den Chameleon.
Dragon Den Chameleon.
Yeah, out of Waco, and
Oh, okay.
he gets a very limited supply. I think he's fixing to get some more in, but they usually don't last long.
Very cool.
A lot of people like it's great for crested geckos, the enclosure. You know,
Oh, yeah.
we had some eyelash viper breeders come up to us and ask where they came from because they were going to get them and then replace the screen with acrylic on the front.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I was like, hey, there's multiple uses for them. So this is just one application that we have here.
Very cool. So, doing the shows and that type of thing, is that something like that type of enclosure where like it would kind of stress me out because like with chameleons, it's one of those things where like I want them to be able to feel safe and do their own thing and get away from your big monkey hands, but I kind of need you to see it so you can maybe want to buy it because I'm here at a show. So like, how do you kind of
Well, I don't
like?
know if you can see. I don't like. I don't know if you can see. Who can you see?
Oh yeah,
So this one, do you see him right here
oh yeah.
in there? I mean, you can see through it. You know, in the video. Now this one's sitting right here in the front. In the video, you know, it's not the same as, you know, at a show because I can see everybody staring at me right now. They're all looking, all the top rows looking down at us, like, "What are y'all doing in
Looking
here?"
for food.
Yeah, you know, you're not feeding us, you know, but you can see in them quite well. I mean, at a show, it's a little different, you know, because it's in person, I can see them clear as day.
Right.
And so, and the setup gets them. So the setup is impressive. I feel like we set up a very impressive display of chameleons. Whenever somebody walks up to our table, then they ask questions. And then when we go and when they're asking questions, well, now we can discuss chameleons with you, you know, and we can have that conversation instead of them just coming walking by trying to get a sneak peek. I love talking to chameleons, even if you're not going to purchase a chameleon from me.
We'll talk to you all day long about chameleons.
Yeah, I mean, it's a passion of both of ours. We wouldn't be doing it if we didn't love it so much.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But I mean, honestly, we set them up like this at shows too because I don't know if you've been to a show and seen. Usually, chameleons are just in deli cups and they're all black and their eyes are sunken in and they're all scratching to get out. When we go to shows, these will eat. They will drink. They're basking. They're walking around. They're being active. You know, they're just living life in it. They don't even know any different. You know, they just occasionally see somebody walk in front of the cage and, oh, you know, and I mean, they'll sit there and eat right in front of them. And people are just blown away. Oh, my God, your chameleon's eating at a show. You know, well, because it feels safe.
Right.
You know, and it's not crammed in a deli cup. I hate seeing them in the deli cups. It's like that's, you know. Yeah. You know, so this way, and we bring their lights, you know, and everything, and they're able to just walk around, you know, and they don't have a problem with, you know, anything really.
And if they've had enough, they go back towards the back of the cage. You know, somebody may walk up like, well, I want to see that one in the back of the cage. I'm like, well, make a trip around the show.
Yeah.
And then come back, and I'm willing to bet he just
He just needed a break.
He needed a break.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So he walked back to the back of the cage, and then by the time they come back around, guess what? The chameleon's at the front of the cage.
Yeah.
And ours, we literally raise them as soon as they come out of the egg. They see my face, his face, our daughter's face. They see us. We feed them every single day. We check them over. I take them out, look, make sure everybody's doing good. And they're very used to humans. And, we get messages all the time, even though we tell people when they get a new one, leave them alone for a couple of days because that cage is new, everything's new. But they message us, they're like, they just ate out of our hand. Oh my God, and it's like, well,
Yep.
It's because ours are pretty social. We always get lots of messages about, well, they don't like being in their cage. They just get happy whenever I hold them. Well, they're just social. Our babies are pretty known for being social.
We offer a variety of feeders, and it's always keeping them intrigued,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what's
Right.
next? What's the next feeder?
Yeah. Yeah, because
And-
people will message us, well, what have you offered them? Because I don't know what to do. They have been exposed to almost everything by the time they go home to you.
No mealworms.
Yeah, no mealworms though.
Yep, we don't feed any mealworms. If you're gonna feed any worm like that, feed a superworm,
Mm-hmm.
and make sure it's gut loaded well. You could grind up our dry gut load mix and use that as their bedding.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we don't use any of the substrate weird wood
Well,
chip
it's-
type.
Well, yeah, most of it's wheat bran is
Yeah.
what it is, and wheat bran is great for fiber, but no other
It's
nutritional
nothing.
value.
Yeah. So we use literally our dry gut load as our superworm bedding.
Yeah, and superworms are a great feeder for chameleons. Everybody, says no, you can't feed superworms. No, you can feed superworms. It's the nutritional value of the superworm. So, but can you feed only superworms? Probably not. Nothing wants to eat the same thing every day.
Right.
Always mix it up. Even do dubias. If you're wanting a convenient feeder, do the dubias.
Mhm.
But with dubias, you got to worry about uric acid buildup. Once the nymph starts getting closer to adulthood, it stores uric acid as protein. So
then you end up with a chameleon with gout.
right. So you need to feed younger nymphs of dubias. So to offset that, feed younger nymphs of dubias and feed silkworms.
Yep.
And it's a little balance, and every insectivore lizard would benefit from that. It's not just chameleons. A variety of feeders for any animal, you're getting a different nutritional factor.
Variety's the spice of life. That's all it is.
Well, and that's kind of the thing with when people think advanced in chameleons and they get freaked out or whatever. And it's one of those things where it's like, well, it's not necessarily difficult. Like you just had to stop and think for a second, well, what about superworms? And it's like, okay, well, just don't keep them on straight brand. Like you got to vary the diet and the things that you're saying, it's not a complex thing. It's just that if you're new, you didn't know that, and you heard never superworms, and then you see some guy with a superworm, you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any. And it's like, no, dude, just 2 steps. It's a little bit different gut load or what have you. Same thing for folks that you're just going to go to the pet store and get dubia and chuck them in there because you have a leopard gecko or something that doesn't care. And it's like, well, no, the same thing is true. It doesn't have to be a chameleon. It could, any lizard, where if you don't know that about the life stages of certain roaches, if you don't know that about, using silkworms to balance things out and stuff, it's not necessarily just a chameleon thing. It just is that I think they probably present it a little faster, and that, when you see gout and you see problems, people are already the keeper's already a little nervous. And so then it starts to look weird, and it's like, oh, I totally screwed up, and it's a chameleon, and they're already a little on edge, as opposed to I gave my crested gecko a roach, then it was weird. I don't know, but they're derpy anyway. It's the attitude, I guess, isn't the same. People are a little more high strung about chameleons.
Yeah, chameleons. It's they get that rumor of they're made of glass.
Yeah, and they get hyper fixated about a little thing that's probably not even a thing or a problem. It's just that day the chameleon isn't feeling very hungry, or feeling very thirsty. They're like, oh, well, he's not drinking, so he's going to die.
Yeah.
No, that's not how it works. You know, they're still a resilient animal. Some of our wild caught, just imagine what that animal went through, all the way from Madagascar to my house.
Yeah, thrown on a boat, and
that animal survived that whole trip, and then got put in my cage, and then I'm sitting here looking at it, going, "Okay, you're a little dehydrated. Let's worry about hydration and food. Let's see what happens. They may not eat for a week or two. Well, okay, so I'm still going to meet your parameters. You know, I'm going to offer you proper lighting and offer the water, the mistings.
Yeah.
And just leave them alone. And usually after a week or two, they get brighter. They start drinking. They're starting to acclimatate. And then this chameleon that was plucked 30 days ago in Madagascar from the wild is all of a sudden thriving in my care because I had a little patience.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, with chameleons, you don't get as long as, leopard gecko does. You know, you don't get as long of error time, but it's there, you know, and it's like, if you'll know your chameleon, like me, since I deal with more of them on the care level, I'll see one animal one day and I'm like, you know what, Lee, this one's just acting weird to me. You know, something's going on. And he'll go, okay, now let's do a fecal. Let's figure this out. Let's see what's wrong with it. You know, and then he usually can figure it out. You know what, we need to give him a boost of this or a boost of that. But at me, I noticed it, I guess, I call it the spiritual level. You know, I noticed they're just not feeling good, you know. I can tell, I can feel that they're not feeling good, and then he will try to figure out what is it, you know, and it's like keepers could notice it once they learn their animal. Yeah. You know, learn your animal. Your animal's going to tell you, I don't feel good today. You know, okay, well, why don't you feel good? Let's see why. You know,
it's a time thing, just spending that time. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, you know, we try to keep people out of the vet as much as we can, because since they're so sensitive to medicine, it's like that's usually the vet's like, let me pump you full of all this medicine that's dosed for a bearded dragon, you know, and chameleons just can't handle it.
Right.
When most of the time you can do it at home.
Yeah. A lot of it can. Sometimes a vet is needed. But you gotta find that special vet that, you know,
the one vet that we all love.
There's a guy named Rob Koch that's in San Antonio. I think he runs the reptile area in the zoo there. And he's been on a couple of times, and I've heard him talk, and that man is very intelligent when it comes to chameleons. And he is amazing in what research he has done just on his own, you know, about chameleons. And that's the type of vet you want to try to find. You don't, if you need a vet. But a lot of the chameleon problems aren't really vet related. It's more of there's something that you're just not doing. Are you feeding empty feeders?
Yep.
You know, are they bored of that feeder tasting the same? You know, are your lights off? You know, because they are a daytime species. They like to bask. They like to feel that UV.
Yeah.
And some people, you know, I see them, they'll, like on Craigslist, they'll have this chameleon cage with one heat dome on there, a mercury vapor bulb with 120 watt on there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, y'all got to think of how they exist in the wild.
Yeah.
You know, they're shade dwellers. They actually go to the shaded area and move out into the sun. So they need both in an enclosure. They need to be able to get out of it and get into it. If they're in it all day long and they have no access to get out of it, well, then the chameleon's going to show a little stress.
Yeah.
And it's not complicated. It's a very simple way of thinking, I guess, for us. And I try to get our customers or anybody to kind of just take a step back. Don't believe everything you've heard about chameleons, and let me talk to you for a minute. You know, it's a lot to take in, but it's really not a lot. It's all basic knowledge. You know, we know how they act in the wild. You know, their thriving time of the year in Madagascar is the rainy season. That's when the babies hatch and all this stuff because they have so their winter isn't cold, but it's dry. So they have a dry, which is their winter, a dry season, and then a wet season, which is their summer.
Yep.
So they have 2 seasons like that. So most of the time the hatching and stuff like that happens in the wet season. And that's kind of how I based my misting schedules, my lighting, my UVB index, all that off of is for the prime time of life in that country, which is usually an 85-degree basking spot. Seems to be on point. And then I'll do a 3.5 Ferguson reading on the UVB on the adults, but on the babies I only do a 2. The reason why I do a 2 is because the man I knew in Madagascar said that most of the baby chameleons he saw over there were in low-lying bushes in the shade, protecting their predators. Right.
Okay.
And then bugs would come around the base of those bushes and shrubs to drink the sap or the berries that dropped off it, and that's how they were eating their little beetles, their little
things,
little gnats and grasshoppers and stuff like this.
Okay.
So a baby chameleon, I'm sure you could blast it with 3.5 on the UVB scale, but it's not needed for a neonate and a baby because they're heavily concerned with surviving in the wild. So I feel like that's just as important in captivity. So the UVB index needs to be lower.
Very cool. That makes perfect sense once you say it out loud. But that's awesome.
That's how we think about it is just be simple. Try to give them everything they need and give them everything they need in the best time of their life, which who isn't happy in the summer, I mean, so it's like, give them everything they have in the summer. And, because some people run some caging methods that we're just really not a fan of, and it's to simulate the dry season. And it's like, why would you do that whenever you could just give them the best in captivity instead of giving them, well, we'll give them a dry season in captivity. Why? We don't have to.
Well, yeah, there's no benefit to it that we've seen.
No.
I haven't seen one benefit to trying to match the dry season and then the rainy season. There's no breeding difference. There's no food response difference. Other than the chameleon seems a little less active, I guess, would be the difference in the dry season. If we offered a dry season, they seem a little more just like lazy, not wanting to do as much.
Okay.
Well, and we kind of noticed that, like, some people will message or post on groups and think, why does my chameleon look so drab? They do get a little drab in the winter, like their colors get a little bit duller, and even though our homes are climate controlled, they feel the barometric pressure. They know, okay, it's winter, let me just kind of be lazy, put on this coat, this old raggedy coat, and just sit here. And that's what they do. They know, they feel it, but we don't have to simulate it. Right. They can just feel it with barometric pressure.
Yeah, and here in Texas, everybody says, "Oh, how are you raising chameleons in Texas?" It's actually very easy.
I think it's easier down here in the South. I don't know how people are doing in the North.
Yeah, that or up north was probably pretty hard with your heaters running all the time and
just dry air.
Yeah. It's the drying out when you're running heaters. That's the number one problem. Is you can maintain temperature, no problem. It's just people don't take into account the idea. I'm a little different because I have a facility. It's separate. But like if you're at home, like it's 75 in my house. Like what's the problem? It's like you just aren't accounting for the fact that your entire home is drier now. Like it's definitely something to fight against.
Yeah, like we adjust the wattage in their basking bulbs, to counteract the fact that, our heater's on, and then in the summertime, we'll change the basking bulb because it's summertime and our air conditioner's blasting.
Right.
So it's like we do pay attention to, the basking temperatures and things because of our central heat and air, but
And I have some friends up north that raise chameleons, and I kind of gave them some tips and tricks that seem to help with their room that they're keeping their chameleon in. Is so we like to keep our cages clean or the sterile raising. So get you some live plants outside the enclosure,
like in the
right?
room.
So in the room,
Hmm.
uh,
Yep.
or if you have like a reptile room, right? You could mop the floor with just water before you go to bed at night, and that'll give you your humidity spike. You know,
Yep.
very very simple little things that would increase the humidity in that room, even though a heater is blowing.
Yep.
And like we're starting to honestly think we've always done it in the adult cages since they're on the Miss King system. We use puppy pee pads on the bottom instead
Okay.
of paper towels. And if you know what a puppy pee pad is, it's basically a diaper.
It's water crystals.
Yeah, it's water crystals. It catches that moisture. And I'm thinking that must be creating some humidity, that happens because
Sure.
I mean it doesn't never really dry out, it stays wet, but yet it's not, leaking water everywhere.
Right.
And we change them about once, twice a week, depending on, if they mess in there or anything. But I'm thinking that's got to be helping it too. And with it being down on the bottom of the cages, that little bit of humidity can kind of rise up within the cages. And we use all screen cages on the adults. Now the babies are in, hybrid, so screen and plastic. But
Yeah, with the hybrids,
Okay.
you have to worry about temperature
Mhm.
a little bit more with the hybrids, especially
Oh, okay.
because it's hot.
because it's a little hotter. So I mean, with them on the juveniles and neonates, we don't offer a basking bulb. We just do a 6500K and then a UVB bulb that
Oh.
I place layers of screen on to get to the UVB index I want.
Oh,
So-
okay.
So they don't actually get a incandescent bulb or a basking lamp. They get a linear 6500K bulb that actually produces almost the right amount of heat.
Yeah, a little
You
bit
know?
of warmth for them, so
So-
they're not cold or anything.
Right. So they move to the
Cool.
top of the cage if they want to get warm, and then they move out to the front or to the lower branches of the cage to get more room temperature. And
Huh.
that's how we deal with the hybrid cages, or the covered all three sides of a cage and just the top and front screened.
Cool. So, do you have a preference for your UV lights, or do you go with anybody specific, or are you just getting what you get and then go off your UV meter?
So I've been running two brands, and they're basically identical. It would be on what shade you like, because they have two different shades of UVA or visible light coming out of them, and that's the Arcadia 6% and then
Okay.
the Reptisun 5.0. We've been using the Reptisun 5.0 for 15 years.
Wow.
And but they were T8s, and then we transitioned to the T5s.
Okay.
And the T5s are a lot stronger of a bulb, even in the 6% in the Arcadias. So, but they do cast a different color spectrum. One's a little bluer than the other. The Arcadia seems to produce a little more of a blue light.
Yeah,
Oh.
like in some of our show pictures, like you'll see in Chandler's cage, he's the adult we always take with us.
Mm-hmm.
His is almost like a blue haze that's casting in his cage versus like at home, it's more of a white,
Right.
light than it is like that blue shadowy look.
And that's just the spectrum on how the bulbs were built. But they both seem to perform very well.
Wow.
But with the T5 bulbs, you got to remember how strong they are. They are very strong. So
Right.
you at least need to be 6-8 inches away from that bulb at minimum, either with your branch or elevating above your cage. And if that's not enough, add a layer of screen in between the bulb and the screen cage, and that will drop the UV index a little bit too.
Very cool.
So, but they're both great bulbs. I actually have some Reptisuns that are going on 3 years. 3
Yeah.
years. Still reading the exact same UVB I had after firing them up for the first couple of days, getting them warmed up. They're still reading the exact same UVB reading.
And
Wow.
it's usually not supposed to last like that.
Right.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. And usually they're supposed to be replaced yearly, but with a UVB meter, I mean, that thing's worth its weight in gold to us.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
they're expensive, but it's like if you have anything at home that's a daytime animal, you know, a
Yep.
full living animal, you need to buy one. I mean, it's amazing.
And then, like the guys over there at Reptile Gumbo Podcast, they're using Vivtex over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to get a couple of Vivtex, and I'm going to run them in these cages behind us. I want to see the difference in between an LED versus a linear. You know, I want to see the strength, the light emitted. You know, I want to see how the animal reacts, because it'd be great if we moved over to the LED technology, if it's there. You know, I don't know if it's quite there, but that would be my own personal testing, not what kind of data I can read online.
Oh, yeah. Well, so I actually am kind of doing the same thing. The thing about that I have found so far with that is it changes, for me at least, it changes how I set up enclosures. And so what I've always loved about chameleons and day geckos and any number of things that are kind of set up similarly to the things behind you guys is linear lighting, especially for UV, makes stuff like that so convenient. And I really love that. And like it's kind of a uniform thing. You know what I mean? Like everybody kind of uses the same style of bulb, about the same strength. We all go like 6 to 8 inches. Like we all kind of know the game for what we need to get started. And I really love the VivTech stuff, and I use it for a lot of high UV things for my like iguanids and uromastics and stuff. But I'm setting up the enclosure totally different, and
Right.
so it's one of those things where it's a really cool product, and then it's about application. You know what I mean? Like trying to make it fit what you guys have going on and how that works and that kind of thing.
Well, yeah, because you want a cascade effect of the UVB index in the cage. You don't want just 3 and then a bunch of leaves covering it. You want them to be able to move down to the next stick and go to a 2 or 2.5 or 2.7. They know what they need, you know, what they want to absorb, what they're feeling in their bodies, because, I mean, it's radiation. That's what UVB is. And it's simulating the rays that comes off the sun. But the chameleon's going to know, and if one thing that concerns me with the LEDs is a lot of them, I don't think there's a linear out there yet that I know of. I think Vivtech's working on a linear. But with the isolated one diode in the middle, you're concentrating all that into an isolated area. So how's that going to affect the animal? Because even though the whole cage is lit up, do they think they're getting UVB from just that spot, or are they assuming their whole cage is getting UVB?
So it ends up being it's a spotlight, but it kind of, you know, it's like a tiny flood bulb, like, you know, the old school mercury vapors where it's just a giant cone of insanity.
Yeah.
Same idea, but smaller and not nuclear. So
right. And then it creates a cone effect, right? So it gets wide and less intense as it comes.
But like you were saying, then you got to have a meter to be able to, you know, set where you think you want everything to be. When you're doing, I mean, honestly, it wouldn't matter any kind of light you use, but when you're doing animals like chameleons and things like that, you just kind of have to have one, like in order to know what it is that you're doing.
It's their eyes, you know. I mean, they're all eyeballs.
Yeah.
so you know, you don't want a UVB index of 6 or 8 or anything like that whenever you're with an animal that's only visual. You know, they don't use hearing, they don't use their taste to get or heat pits or anything like that. They use their eyes to move around, find feeders, drink, interact, everything. So like back in the day, whenever they had those curly Q fluorescent compact fluorescents,
Mm-hmm.
and they had the UVC coming out of those.
Yep.
Like 2010 time frame, everybody kept posting up, "Oh, my chameleon's blind now because of that bulb."
Yeah.
Yeah, those are bad news.
And and it makes you wonder, isolating down UVB to that tight of a beam. Yes, the higher you lift it, the wider the beam goes, but it's still a concentration.
Mm-hmm.
And on a tropical or a subtropical species, is that going to affect them different than, like, let's say you're a mastix that likes it hot?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because I'm blasting stuff on purpose. They're looking for it. Yeah.
Yeah, see, like your mastics are amazing. I love those lizards. That was one of my favorite desert species to mess with. We had ornates back in the day,
Oh, cool.
and they lived on millet. That's what we were told back in the day. Is they live on millet, and then you feed them greens and don't water them unless you give them water and then remove it.
Mm-hmm.
Is the way that we were told to raise them.
Old school.
Yeah. And they thrive with us. I mean, I'm sure husbandry has changed on them. I haven't looked at them in the past 10 years, but I'm sure husbandry has changed. Lighting has changed on them. Maybe even dietary changes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I always think stuff like that's hilarious where we look at it now and it's like, what were we doing? But then you look at pictures and it's like, I don't know, man. Some of them lizards look really good. Like we can't have been that bad.
That's it. That's it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
us. It's like with some of these, new techniques with chameleons, it's like, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You
Right.
know?
Yeah.
I mean,
there's something to be said for that.
yeah, I mean, and we hear it all the time. People walk up and with Chandler at shows, and Chandler's actually one of our smaller males, and he's just smaller naturally, I guess.
Just a petite.
But yeah, he's just more on the petite side. But people come up and see him, and they're like, "Oh my God, that chameleon is so huge," and I'm like, "What?" When I look at him, I see little,
Right.
in comparison to these other males that are next to him, and people, he's huge, and I'm like, okay, it's got to be something that we're just doing,
Well, it's a healthy chameleon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't get that experience. We're trying to change the narrative whenever we go to a show. Everybody that sees all these wild caught, fresh imported chameleons, they see a lethargic or stressed out animal. We want to show you the opposite side of that. An actively feeding, drinking, bright-eyed, walking around, interactive animal. And I think that's where they're thinking, "Oh wow, look at that big animal." Is they're really saying, "Wow, look at that healthy chameleon."
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree. So I am interested with chameleons in general. I come across, or I seem to come across, folks that are really into chameleons um, tend to breed them.
Yeah.
And I have always thought of that as like a lot of chameleons, as far as lizards go, or reptiles in general, they have weird life cycles in that a lot of times they're shorter lived or they live in incredibly harsh places, or sometimes they have really weird things with their egg development. And Madagascar is a crazy place. So like there's a lot of really odd things with chameleons. And so it just seems that people who get really into them like that it almost seems to be like a natural progression of it is that they end up breeding them because you get so into it, you learn so much, you have so many details and so much knowledge about this. And then it's like year 6 or 7, and now you need another chameleon is you like it. Whereas I have a super diverse collection. We have all sorts of stuff because we do shows, and we do have some things that have shorter lifespans. But then we have tortoises, or I have a rhinoceros iguana, or I have things that are 20, 25 years old that are just getting going, and I guess it's a little bit different mentality, I suppose. Where like I don't feel a need to reproduce my tortoise because he just now figured out what girls are and he's 23. Like, I mean, so I'm not worried about, what am I going to do when he's not here? He's going in my will, so I won't know, you know?
Right.
Whereas for chameleon folks, it seems like that's kind of a progression. And to me, it makes sense. I originally came over to reptiles from the saltwater hobby.
Okay.
And the saltwater hobby is just really intensive. They're big time nerds. There's a lot of information and detail. It's very expensive. So people put a lot of emphasis on things and they really get down into the nitty gritty. And then when I talk to folks who are into chameleons, who are into dart frogs or day geckos, or like you sound like people I already know because you talk the same and you're so time intensive, dedicated and things like that. And then it just seems to be the progression is, well, I learned all these things and I know what I'm doing. I got a system. I'm good at this. And then babies showed up. So that it like, was it a goal to produce them, or you're developing the husbandry and then it's like, well, boys and girls make more because they're healthy and doing well, so we got more. Like, how did that come to be?
Right. So, I mean, just the fascination of the first panther chameleon we got. We were, we'd sit there for hours just watching it, and his name was Ranger. He was a Banja panther chameleon. And just we'd watch him and see how he acts and all that stuff. And talked with the breeder, and the breeder kind of explained a little bit to us about what to be prepared for if we decided to breed. And at first we were like, no, we're not going to worry about that. And then I started getting more into the details of keeping chameleons, and the fascination of them, where they come from. And then I get in contact with a guy in Madagascar, and he starts telling me this wealth of knowledge. And after that, I was like, well, now I have to breed them. I don't, I don't have a choice. And now, or at least I didn't feel like it, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. There's breeders out there that shouldn't be breeding, and there's breeders out there that are a great asset to the community. I say if you can't bring something to the table to benefit the animals or offer an amazing animal, then you probably shouldn't breed. You should probably just enjoy the animal. We don't usually offer females at the shows for sale unless it's by special request. And most of those go off to friends we know that are breeders, right?
Okay.
And that's just so people have a chance to think about it. Think about it first. Don't
we raise your male first, and that's even what we did. We raised up Ranger to an adult before we even purchased a female.
Oh, wow.
Raise
Okay.
your male first, then see, do you like doing this? Do you like taking care of him every single day? Do you want to take care of a female that's a little bit harder to take care of, and she's not going to give you all the spectacular colors that a male is going to give you, and then
not a great personality.
Yeah, and then drop you 100 eggs.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, and then you got to deal with all that. It's like we don't do females. I mean, shows are the hardest with that because most of the time you go to a show, everybody wants a female of any species.
Mm-hmm.
The females are bigger, the females are better, the females live longer. Well, in panthers, it's completely opposite. The females are smaller, they're not colorful, and they don't live as long.
The longest lived female we had, she was 6 years old. She was a wild caught nosy folly.
Yeah, that's unheard
and
of.
Wow.
it we could have swore year after year, okay, this is her last year.
She's gonna die.
Nope,
Nope.
nope, never dropped a gram, nothing. Just kept on a trucking.
And her name was Medusa.
Yeah.
Cool.
And females are great animals, and
They're just not for pets. They're, like a single pet owner.
unless you're only going to have a female, if you're trying to get it into panthers, everybody sees the cheaper price tag, so they want a panther. But what you're thinking a panther is and what a female panther chameleon is two completely different things.
Right.
And so we have to explain that. Once we start explaining it to people, they're like, well, yeah, I didn't want a female panther. I wanted a male panther chameleon. I said,
Yeah.
yes. I'm not discouraging you, but I'm letting you know all the facts to a female. I mean, it's heartbreaking whenever a female lives her full life with us as a breeder and then passes away, because of their short life cycles. And males live quite a bit longer, 5 to 7 years. We had a wild caught that made it 8 years, a male.
Wow. Cool.
And, the shorter life cycles is a little discouraging, but not at the same time, I guess.
Well, we don't have to wheel these animals.
Yeah.
Right. Different game.
Yeah, we don't have to wheel these animals off.
Well, and then the majority of the breeders out there, I feel like the price reflects the lifespan.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Like in ball pythons, one of the most common snakes bred, multiple gene, recessive, multiple gene animals go for a whole lot of money, but they also live 20 years.
Right.
And panthers, we breed for locale specific. So
Right.
the locality, region, the color phase that comes from that area.
We try to get as wild as we can, as wild looking as we can. We don't want to change it.
So we're not trying to create something that doesn't already exist.
Yeah.
We're just trying to recreate the sires that we have.
Yeah. We're trying to create what you're going to see in Madagascar. We're not trying to create a different color because their genetics don't work the same way like that.
Well, they're polymorphic, polygenic. So, you can cross locales all you want together, but you're never going to know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then, so now you took a predictable pairing and made something else out of it that you never know what you're going to get. It's kind of nice to have something that's predictable.
Yeah.
Here's the dad. Here is the mom's dad. There you go.
Right. You get a variation in between the two.
Yeah.
And, that's important to us. We try to breed for wild type look is what we call it. Because there's people out there that sell color morphed panther chameleons. And if they want to do it, that's fine. I'm not beating on them or anything like that. As long as they're truthful about the animal they're selling.
Yeah.
Don't have a 3 locale cross and sell it as an ambelobe. Because then that just hurts everybody in the community. We want to help everybody in the community. We do things a little more traditional and the old school in our hydration methods here. We still daytime mist. There's a new cycle going around that's the whole fogging deal, which is based off the dry season in Madagascar, not the wet season. The wet season, it rains.
Mm-hmm.
It rains quite often.
In the dry season, it's foggy at night.
Right, yeah. You get the high humidity at night, and then the fog banks move in, and then somehow, in theory, they breathe in the fog, and it hydrates them, and that's supposedly how they're supposed to get hydrated when there's no peer-reviewed writings I can find that show that chameleons have pores in their lungs, right, or a way to absorb moisture from breathing like that. Where when a snake breathes, it naturally has an expanded lung and it has to constrict to force air out of its lungs, is from my understanding. And so in that case, you could see where some humidity or moisture is leaving the animal. Well, a chameleon uses kind of its connective tissue on its ribs to breathe. So it's not having to force breathing in or out. So it's not expelling that much moisture out of its mouth. Probably a little bit, And the high humidity at night helps, but not necessarily. I don't think fogging, at least in this region, is as important. And we do a misting in the morning and a misting around late afternoon, enough time for the cage to dry out before nighttime.
Okay.
And it works really well. The hydration on our chameleons, all our urates look amazing. The chameleons, we've been doing this 14, 15 years, and I have never had an upper respiratory infection.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
We've never had anything that
Right.
people are having. At least seems like now, and it has to be back to something.
Well, and it could be that they're doing the process wrong, right? Because there's other ways to keep a chameleon healthy. They're very resilient animals. They're very adaptive animals. Look at the deforestation in Madagascar. A lot of people, they say, well, these fog banks and stuff like that are the hydration, and they're living in second growth forests. Well, the guy I talked to 10, 15, 20 years ago, it wasn't that bad. So maybe my information I absorbed from a man living there is a little different than the information that they're absorbing now in a deforestation type environment.
Yeah, that actually makes a ton of sense considering how Madagascar is going.
Right? Yeah. I mean the guy I knew, he'd frequently visit like satellite islands like Nosy Folly. He owned land on there. He owned land over there by Ambanje. He owned land over there on the East Coast. Uh, and so he experienced these dry and wet seasons year round. And he was the one who told me, oh, well, they don't need to. The thing was, oh, you got to keep them wet all the time. Whenever we first got into this,
Mm-hmm.
they're like, no, you don't keep them like a fish. Don't keep them like a frog. They need water to drink and a humidity spike.
And then they need to dry out.
And then they need to dry out. They are dry shedders.
Yep.
And he was explaining all this to me. He goes, it only rains in the morning over here. Where was he? He was in Ambanja at the time. He goes, over here in Ambanja, it's only raining in the morning during the rainy season. And I was like, okay, well, I'll apply that. I'll just do morning and evenings. And so I started doing morning and evenings. I started seeing the chameleons more actively drinking. The urates looking better. And then on top of that, at the same time, I'm changing my gut loads. And so now I'm getting perfect urates versus a little bit of an orange urate.
They look like white chalk sticks.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I started putting 2 to 2 together, and I was like, okay, so we're seeing them actively drink during the day. So that means and that's during the thriving time of year, right? So during the rainy season.
So if you didn't offer a misting while the animal was, awake, it's never going to get a chance to drink.
Right.
So I'm thinking that would be like putting you in your bed and turning on a fogger over your bed and saying, okay, now in the morning when you wake up, you can't have anything to drink. You drank all night long, by breathing in moisture.
Yeah,
and it's like, that's sad.
And it could be applications. I'm interested to see where that hydration method goes. I know there's a lot of people out there trying it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not against it, but I'm not saying I'm for it until I see maybe some peer review biologist backed information. I'm very factual. I like stuff that is in black and white, proving the theories they're putting out there.
Sure.
And I see people having great success with it, but then I also see the opposite side of the spectrum of that too, where they're having horrible experiences with it, which could be the execution of it. Maybe they're not executing the procedure right. But I have a simple method that many chameleon breeders have been doing for a long time, and it keeps the animals healthy. I don't see any health issues. I'm not seeing a big difference. Why is there such a force to try to change something to the other way that is in the worst time of their environments, the dry season, whenever you can just simulate what their thriving hatching times are, which would be the rainy season?
Well, because in captivity, we can make them thrive, not just survive. So why, give them the hardest part of their life when you can just provide them the best part of their life?
because it's not affecting their feeding habits, it's not affecting their breeding habits, and they're doing well. And some species may benefit from the fogging, but I feel like anything getting blasted with microparticles of water isn't good. I mean, because of the bacteria growth, right? So you get bacteria growth 60 degrees and up. It doesn't matter. So, I mean, you're going to have to keep that animal cold at night to be able to not get bacteria growth in the cage.
Yeah,
So,
cold and wet. And it's just like, I don't know, this doesn't sound right.
And so keeping an enclosure at 70 degrees in a fog at night, it just sounds like you're putting a lot of bacteria in the cage that isn't needed. Now, there's people that are doing it successfully. So I can't knock the fact that some people seem to be doing it some way that what I'm seeing isn't working, which is awesome. But I'm not seeing the need for it, because what you could do is add live plants to your room, or a
cool mist humidifier,
or a cool mist humidifier to the room, not directly in the chameleon's cage, blasting in the cage. I'm a little confused on that part of where.
And I'm still going back to if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I get it. So you have listed off several different localities. Is there a specific set of localities that you go for? Let me rephrase that. Did you start out with localities that you liked, or did you see, oh, I really like this look, where is that from? I would like to recreate that look, so I know that's a Ambanja. I know that's a, like, how did that come to be for you?
So it started out with how it looked. She really liked the way Ambanjas look.
The blues and the greens, the reds.
And then it fascinated her, and I started looking into it. I was like, okay, well, what is an Ambanja? What is it? What is it? Well, it's a regional look. And I was like, okay, well, that's pretty neat. Well, what's a regional look? It's a locality. So then I'm like, all right, well, what other localities are out there? So then we start looking around.
And how many locales are there? 40?
No, I think there's. It changes all the time. Originally, it started out like 30 or 32. I think we're way past that now. I think we're into the 40s now. And that's from like satellite islands like Nosy Folly, Nosy Beach, Kamba, Nosy Mitsio. And then you got mainland islands, which are Ambelovi, Ankarami, Ankafi, Simbaba, and Banja, yeah, and Diego Suarez. I mean, the list goes on and on. And there's certain colors that we just enjoyed, that we saw from wild caught pictures, and we were like, wow, wouldn't that be amazing to reproduce in captivity?
Well, and like when people come up to us to buy from us, they're like, well, I don't know which color to pick. It's too hard. And it's like, well, what's your favorite color?
Yeah. So our main focus is Ambanjas. Now I go for, so there's a sub-locality in Ambanja called Ambalto. So that's the northern farthest part of Ambanja before a river system hits that splits into Ambelovi, because it's all natural barriers that make these isolations of locality. Yep. And Olaf Pronk was the one who helped me figure out this, what we consider a sub-locale, which is Ambalto, which is found in the town of Ambalto in the region of Ambanja. And it's a cleaner colored body animal, a little more on the blue side with red bars.
Cool.
And so that's kind of our main focus in our Ambanjas, is that more of an isolated in a region of Madagascar look, is going for that look. And then we do Simbabas because we always wanted them, couldn't find them when we first got into chameleons. And I had the chance to get my hand on a captive bred male and jumped all over it. I had to get it. Usually I deal with wild caughts, but I saw somebody produced a captive bred Simbaba, so I had to jump all over it. And so we got Simbabas because I've always been fascinated with the color. And then Nosy Folly it was talked to me a lot about, by the man who lived in Madagascar, and it fascinated me. So I had to get a pair to see what all the hype was about. So Nosy Follies, they have a white background,
Mm-hmm.
and their slang name, I guess, is called Oriamana, which in Malagasy means red rain, because they have red polka dots.
Yeah.
And then they have blue teal bars.
It's like a turquoise bluish color with like a white body.
And it's a very neat locality. He told me a theory he had on how that locality even came to exist, because he's owned property on Nosy Follies since the early 60s and never saw
Whoa.
chameleon on that island until about the mid to late 80s. In the mid to late 80s, a tropical storm came up the coast of Africa and blew outwards. And he thinks that what he was seeing, if he can remembered back that far, was he saw nosy bees, which are to the south of that island, nosy combo, which are south of that island, and coastal and banja and baltos on that island. But that was when he didn't have an established building to live there yet, so he could only frequent it kind of rarely. And then come towards the mid to late 90s, all of a sudden you're starting to see Nosy Follies. So we're wondering if that's kind of a natural cross, right? Because they all got blown onto that island from a big tropical storm that happened. It was always a very interesting theory to me, and it kind of drew me more towards the locality, because I was like, oh, well, that's even cooler. I gotta see what all this is.
Well, and just the idea that, like, most of us are hearing those stories, or like we're reading about it in a book. Like if you're talking to a dude, like,
right,
no,
yeah.
it's this guy's backyard. Like that's
it was his backyard. I mean,
yeah, that's amazing.
And I learned so much from the guy, and I wish he was still alive. He did pass away.
I was gonna ask how old this dude was, because you're talking about, like, well, when I had a place there in the '60s, and it's like, whoa, dude.
He was old, but he got sick.
He got sick. From what I heard, was he died from the Black Plague.
But we don't know. I mean,
but I could never get a confirmation.
It's not like he posted that.
Right,
sure.
But I mean, just dude was fascinated with wildlife, all wildlife, and plants, and he was big into plants. Always very taking pictures of plants more than he did reptiles. I mean, and he's just a wealth of knowledge to me, because I wouldn't even be asking a question about chameleons, but he's talking about this plant and how this environmental change is happening in this part of Madagascar, and how it makes the plant bloom this way or that way. I'm like, well, okay, so this environmental change happened. What's happening to the chameleons in this area?
Right.
He goes, oh, I didn't even think about that. I'm worried about the plants.
Yeah.
And so he goes back and he observes the chameleons in that area. And we're talking, he has to go all the way to the service out there was horrible. So it was just whenever he could get a hold of me, I had to be ready to answer on the phone. And anytime he called, I answered.
Yep.
And some would be through emails, and stuff like that. And just his attention to detail, I felt, helped us out tremendously on how we take care of our animals. And I would ask him personal opinions. I'd be like, well, we're doing it this way. What do you think? And he goes, well, I've never thought of it that way. I'm observing them in the wild. Let me watch it for a little while. I'll tell you what I think. And like the whole superworms is a bad feeder, right? Because too much chitting.
Too much crunch.
Too much crunch, is what everybody says. Well, they're eating a lot of grasshoppers in Madagascar and a lot of beetles in Madagascar. That has a whole lot more crunch and chitting to it than a superworm. Mm-hmm. So a superworm isn't a bad feeder. It may be nutritionally poor, but you can change that.
Right.
And you know, it was little things like that we just talked back and forth on, and I'd say some things to him, he'd say some things back to me, and it just helped us tremendously on understanding common sense things, you know, that should just be duh. But until you kick it back and forth with somebody that has the same amount of passion, you're kind of at a loss. So that's the reason why I kind of post some of the stuff on Instagram and stuff like, oh, I'm making this dry gut load, or I'm gut loading with papaya tonight and mustard greens, uh, and or this night I'm gut loading with mango and apple, or this night I'm not offering any fruits and I'm doing spaghetti squash
Yeah.
and zucchini, you know, and it's just mixing it up, and that's part of him helping me understand the dietary variation the bugs consume over there.
Right.
You know, I mean, there's agricultural land over there that was due to deforestation, and I mean, there's bugs eating that agricultural
Yeah.
land.
I mean, and yeah, to have, boots on the ground to tell you, you
Right.
know, oh
And
yeah, it's a bean field. Like, yeah, I mean, like that
right.
person, is
And
giving
so,
you a real time change.
and some of the videos and stuff I've seen from Madagascar, yeah, there's a lot of secondary growth now. There's a lot more deforestation than whenever we were really heavy into kicking back and forth our information.
Right.
And so I feel like the animals were probably more evolved and adapted to the primary growth forest versus the secondary growth lines that they're growing in man-made agricultural areas.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stick with my older information as far as hydration and nutritional factors because I feel like it meets more of their evolutionary standard before man got involved.
I mean, that makes sense. I get what you're saying on that. I do, since I got some gumbo folks floating through the chat there, I do want to ask you guys about the show circuit in Texas because I hear all about it and I hear about Texas people and you guys have a ton of reptile shows and it's awesome. And then I see, you guys post on Instagram and show your setups and stuff. So, what's that all about? What's that like? How's the herp show circuit? How's the Texas reptile show life?
Shows are honestly our favorite thing to do for chameleons because we can get right there and talk to you face to face and really show you why it's not this hard. And like people will walk by and I'll hear them mumble under their breath, no, chameleons are too hard, keep going. And I stop them, and he gets mad sometimes. He's like, stop listening to people's conversations.
I'm like, quit eavesdropping.
And I'm like, no, I want to educate, that's what we're about is we want to educate people that no, they're not hard. Honestly, a bearded dragon can be harder. It's just setting them up right the first time. Just like anything else, you can't put an isopod in sand and that's all it is. And, we stop people a lot and change their mind. A lot of our customers are people that said, no, chameleons are too hard. And now their chameleons are huge and thriving and, doing great. I mean, and they're like, wow, I didn't know, that I felt so lied to. And our biggest tip when people ask us, what is your biggest tip for somebody wanting to get into chameleons? Stay off of Facebook.
Yeah.
That's your biggest
right.
tip.
You're my kind of people. Okay.
Those Facebook groups will scare you to death. They will just ruin it.
This is a passion for me, and I've absorbed a lot of knowledge and I do a lot of my own research, but I still don't consider myself perfect. But then you see people that have 2 years of experience raising one chameleon, and then they call themselves a group expert trying to tell everybody else how to take care of their chameleons.
Yeah.
That's not right.
We get banned off a lot of groups, because we don't do it the way they want to do
Right.
it. And I try to tell people, look, a chameleon is like so versatile. It's not that they blend in, it's that they fit in.
Right.
So it's like cooking an egg. You can cook an egg a ton of different ways.
Yeah.
You can raise a chameleon a ton of different ways. If you want to put full, thick foliage, all live plants, go right on ahead.
Yeah.
It's going to live.
Yeah. Just make sure and care for the animal and not the plants.
The cage. But I mean, if that's what they want to do, do it. And we try to tell people to start out our way and raise your chameleon up. Get comfortable taking care of him. Then, you know what? Add a plant.
Right.
Add another plant. Add another plant. And then you'll learn how to take care of the animal first, not the cage. But the Facebook groups are terrible. So I like being at shows because I can tell you face to face, show you Chandler. I set his show cage up just like his home cage is set up. It's just built backwards, but I tell everybody, this is it. Set them up like this when you get them home. Yeah. They're going to be fine. And then add a plant later if you want. Or don't, because we don't have any, and our animals do just fine. But shows, it's for education.
Yeah. And some of the funny things I hear about shows and chameleons.
Yeah.
Like I had somebody walk by the other day at the last show we were at. They're like, oh yeah, chameleons, you can't touch them. The oils in your skin will make them sick and they'll die. And I'm like, no.
That's new. Okay.
Like, okay, come over here. Let's just talk. I'm not going to argue with you, but just let me talk with you for a minute. You're thinking of some frog species that can't really be free-handed because of potentially soaps on your hands and stuff like that will make them sick. And so you're talking about two completely different species, and like we tell people, there's nothing can prepare you for taking care of a chameleon but a chameleon. Yeah. You can't take care of a leopard gecko and expect to be able to take care of a chameleon. You have to be able to take care of a chameleon to take care of a chameleon.
Yeah, that's because we hear the whole, if I don't have reptile experience, I can't own a chameleon.
That's why we don't say expert. They're not at expert level.
We call them beginners. We started with them.
They're just.
I mean,
they're specific.
They're specific.
And that's a lot of what we do at the shows. I enjoy the shows too.
For the education alone,
right,
I mean, we're trying to break the stigma.
Yeah. We do a lot more talking and communicating with people. If y'all see us at a show, come on down. We'll talk to you.
We'll talk to you the whole day.
We do not mind talking about chameleons. Selling chameleons is only.
It's a bonus.
A small portion of the reason why we do shows.
Yeah. And then I hate shipping them because I am terrified all night long, all morning long until that animal is there. It's like, what if the plane blows up? It's like, that's all I'm thinking about the whole time. So that's another reason I like doing shows, because I can see the animal in the owner's hands going home. Not, on a plane and a truck, and it's terrifying.
Yep, I agree with that. 100%.
Shipping is so scary.
Yeah. And we do ship animals.
We do ship them, but I'm terrified.
We're probably watching the FedEx notifications more than the people receiving the animal.
Because
we're like,
the plane is going to blow up. That's it. It's like I'm terrified.
Or a flat tire on an 18-wheeler, or this or that, or something's going to stop this chameleon from getting to the person. So we always overdo it in the packing. We always do like an extra cryo pack to hold the temperature more neutral in there. So if the heat pack fails or the cold pack fails, it holds a neutral temperature in there longer.
And I always do. I call them Gatorade, so a hornworm. During that whole first, if we're shipping, say, on like a Wednesday, then Monday and Tuesday, I'm feeding that chameleon extra silkworms, extra hornworms. I'm getting it super hydrated, super fed up. And, people will be like, oh my God, they're like, poop is giant. Because, I'm like,
I planned it that way.
in case they get stuck, at least they got something in there.
Or like that one chameleon where they were like, well, he's hydrated. And they sent us a picture of him still in his shipping container, and he has his big old urate and poop next to him. He goes, well, he's definitely hydrated. I said, well, that was the goal.
Hey, yeah.
Because I'm worried, so I make sure I give them their extra Gatorade and, their extra get prepared for your trip, type of deal.
Yeah. Yeah, but the shows are a blast.
Yeah, we love it.
We meet so many great people. And some people that just aren't, they're misinformed on chameleons.
Yeah.
So we want to do our best to not, to just share information that is relevant, and how we've had experience for 14, 15 years doing this, I mean, we didn't breed for a while. We took a break from breeding, but we still kept chameleons. We just weren't out in the community as much, which is a little bit of a bummer. I was still out in the community, but not as much as I would like. But, we were raising our daughter at the time, and she's 19 going on 20 this year. So she's done, and it gives us back into our passion to where we can start educating people. I love talking chameleons with people. And then the man over there in Madagascar shared so much information with me without me even asking, so I feel like it's my obligation to do the same.
That's awesome.
Because otherwise the knowledge is lost. Then you just don't know.
Well, and like if you've seen us on Reptile Gumbo podcast, but they're always like, nope, we're not buying a chameleon. Nope. And I said, you do know everybody is a future potential customer.
Yeah.
Guess what? He's up here waiting to go home.
I'm pretty sure James Lewis in the chat just said we can't wait to get it from him in a few weeks.
He's staring down at me right now. He says, what are you going to feed me?
Yeah.
With his big old head. He's chunky.
Yeah.
He's going to be going home soon, but that's what I tell him. I said, everybody, because you just never know. I mean, we've had people come up to us at shows, and we sit there and talk to them and talk to them and talk to them and think we're never going to see them again. And then, boom, the next day, they're like, okay, I went home, I set up a cage, I'm ready. Yeah. You made me feel like I can do this. Okay.
Right.
That's awesome.
We seem like some of the shows, we'll talk to people, and then they're like, okay, and they email us, hey, what's the next show you're doing?
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, they're showing up at the next show, asking us more questions, which is fine. Or they're there to purchase a chameleon. We weren't even trying to sell them a chameleon. We were just talking chameleons with them, and it intrigued them.
Yeah.
And
most of the time I have my care sheet posted on our website. And so what I do is I'll tell people, I'm like, look, go home, read my care sheet. Tell me if you want to come back tomorrow, then you can tell me if it sounds easy enough for you. And sometimes they come back and they're like, oh my God, they had all this negative in their mind that chameleons are terrible. They're made of glass. They're too hard to take care of, and it's just like, no, you've heard the wrong information. Stay off of Facebook. Just stay off of there. And I try to stay on the group so I don't start anything to get myself banned. But I watch for my customers.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I want to see if you're making a comment or asking a question, and boom, I'm going to message you and I'm going to answer it because, sometimes it just gets to where, they want to ask these questions and they don't think, well, I don't want to, bother you. I'm like, please bother me all day long. Do not bother Facebook groups because you're going to get information that is going to scare you. And we don't want to scare you. We want you to be, comfortable with it. And if it's a stupid question, in my opinion, there is no such thing as a stupid question. If you thought of it, then you thought of it. So ask it. I've had questions that are weird, but they're not stupid. They're just, you just wanted to know.
Did you give in to the pressure from the chat?
Yeah.
What, you seen it? That's Mufasa, so that would be the daddy to their baby now.
Right.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Who are you mad at?
Yeah. So then that's a Simbaba panther chameleon,
That is crazy.
and he is the sire to James and Katie's
Yep.
baby.
Her
Now, he
same
almost
as-
looks fake.
Yeah, he's
So I'm going to say something now, since the Gumbo folks are in the chat. I'm going to take some credit because I met them and did some podcast stuff and whatnot. And all I heard was, oh, I only do snakes and I want things with legs and I don't want to feed stuff bugs and all this nonsense. And then it turns out, oh, your wife and daughter think lizards are cool, huh? Yeah. And you talk to this lizard nerd. Now all of a sudden we're getting lizards. And now you have like the coolest lizard ever. Yeah, I'm taking some credit for that one. That's I think I helped encourage Katie to overrule James and get an awesome lizard.
Oh yeah.
Dude,
Yep.
that looks, there's literally a fire lizard on it. Looks ridiculous right now facing out at the camera. That's amazing.
Right. Yeah, and then so like that's a Simbaba. I'll let her hold him. Hello, everybody. And I'll go get an Mbanja.
That is so incredible. Well, it's a good thing the oil on your skin isn't going to kill him.
Yeah.
No.
And that, no, I do like that the whole no stupid question thing is
Yeah.
it's one of those things where, because I've actually had some folks talk to me and a few of the folks, the Herpeticulture Network guys, and they do the, well, how do you know that? How do you know all that?
You
You know,
asked.
Yeah, and it's just I read a bunch of books. I was a forum nerd back in the day. I read a bunch of reptile magazine. Like you just took in all this information. It took a really long time. Like it's not a stupid question. You just genuinely don't know.
Right. Right. Yeah. You just don't know, and you won't know until you ask the question. You know.
Look at how orange and yellow he is. Oh man.
See, and they're not mad at us. They're just mad at each other.
Yeah. They're
Right.
solitary animals.
That is beautiful.
And so, I can trust that he's not going to bite me and I can make him, calm down. And just by pushing that, no, we're not going to be angry.
Well, and I will say though that looking at them sitting on your hands, I do understand when folks come by at a show and think that it's gigantic or think that it's huge, because if you're used to the deli cup, not so great,
Yeah.
wild caught kind of looking grubby thing, and then you see a legit healthy male chilling on somebody's hand, like it is significantly more impressive, just in general.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And then, so that's Chandler.
That's the one
Beautiful.
that gets to all the shows with us.
Yeah. He likes that tough every once in a while. And then he goes back in his cage and he's just fine.
Puppy dog Kane. That's why we take him to shows, because also that he is so tame. He will let little kids hold him and grab him on his back, and you're not supposed to do that. But I've just held him so much as a baby and messed with him so much that he just doesn't care.
Well, so that's the thing with my wife and I doing all the shows that we do is, you start the show and you give the rules like, hey, don't grab or this, that, and the other. And then, a toddler or some kid they always do because they're kids.
Yeah.
And I get the parent, it's like, oh no, I'm so sorry. And it's like, all right, well, like I gave the kids the rules, but I wouldn't have brought, I brought a tegu, like they can take it. Don't worry about it. Like you pick the animal that like can deal, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that you can trust the most.
Yeah.
And also, we just know that Chandler does so well at shows because, he literally we just did 5 weekends in a row of shows. And he went, single one of them did fine, still nice and healthy, eats, drinks at the show, and it's like, I really feel like a healthy animal, is going to be able to handle the quote stress, you know, of a show. Because
Sure.
everybody's like, oh, well, how do you know if he's stressed out? And I was like, well, you know, he's eating and drinking and, you know, living life in there. I don't think he would do that if he was stressed.
Yeah, especially something like chameleon that's so visual. I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
they would react
Mm-hmm.
poorly if they were stressed out or
Yeah.
feeling poorly. Like
Yeah.
you know, it's very obvious.
It's that you can see it. I mean, it's like, and that's why with like new owners, when there's something wrong, there's something you didn't see then. You know,
Right.
a couple of days ago, was he shutting his eyes? You know, was his eyes sucked up into his head a little bit? You know, what's going on that you didn't see?
Yeah.
You know, because it's there, you just didn't see it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they're like, this is one of the juvenile babies we have.
So that's one of Chandler's nephews.
Yeah. I want to bring one of those boys out.
But he says, I don't want to fight him. He's too little.
Yeah. See, he's not too. And the juveniles, they know. You know, hey,
Oh, of
that's
course.
that's not my deal. I'm leaving.
Yeah.
You know. But I mean, they're not stressed. It's just, you know, that's the defensive thing that he's doing. He's like, look, I'm big, bad, and tough, and then he'll go in his cage and he'll eat right away.
Well, and
You know,
that's a natural reaction. Like,
right?
oh, that guy's big. I gotta go. Like, that's
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah, but you know, they're not these fragile things. Everybody says, "Oh, well, you know, they'll stress out. They're going to have a heart attack." No, they're not. They're not.
Right.
Glass. They're
Right.
they're very resilient animals.
Yeah. And there is a huge difference between, you know, a natural stressor of I saw another male and I postured up, or you know, just
Yeah.
the things that those
Well,
animals
and
are built to do. You
yes.
know.
And we try to tell people, you know, like who just have one, you know, one male, we'll say, you know what? Because they're like, oh, they're not supposed to ever get stressed out. No, show them a mirror every once in a while, because we're believers in that if they see another male, because they don't know how a mirror works, they think it's another male. And I think that it kind of sparks that drive in them. You know what? I need to eat. I need to take care of myself because there's a male around this corner somewhere.
Competition.
You know, in my territory. So I need to be healthy. I need to be on my game. You know, and tell people ever so often, show them the mirror. You're going to get a great picture.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to get a picture that you're not ever going to get in a different mood.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
if you make them mad, you know, like Mufasa is typically green. He's not yellow. But whenever he's mad at another male is when he turns that yellow on.
Sure.
And, you know, I think it really just, you know, creates that spark for territory. You know, I need to take care of myself because there could be somebody around the corner that I got to fight.
Yeah.
And, you know.
Well, I mean, dude, even there are any number of snake species that males get lazy.
Yeah.
You know, and then you got to introduce another, or even just a shed from a male, or you got to let them know, like, hey, man, if you don't go for her, there's somebody else cruising around. Like,
that's it.
You got to kick it a little bit to make that instinct want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like I see people with captive bred males. Sometimes they'll say, well, my male won't breed. Well, how have you been caring for your male? Oh, well, I've just, you know, the standard husbandry, however they're doing it. I'm like, but has he had to try to do anything? Has he tried to defend himself? You know, have you shown him a mirror?
I don't need to make babies. I got a great life.
Right, yeah.
Exactly.
He basks, he eats, he roams around his cage. There ain't no threat. Why reproduce?
Yep.
You know, I don't need to.
Yep.
And sometimes that happens with the chameleons. You know, they get comfortable and they're that comfortable in their environment, and they don't have any stressor of seeing another male or seeing their reflection, and they're like, well, I have no reason to flare up.
Yeah, apparently my territory is mine, and I don't have to worry about it. You know.
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely.
But you know, for feeding, we tell people it's even if you're not breeding them, it's great because they are going to keep their energy level up.
Right.
You know, they're thinking, oh no, there's a male, you know, in here somewhere. they are going to keep their energy level up because they may have to fight tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, like in the wild, the strongest survive in the wild, and usually the strongest encountered another chameleon and they saw that chameleon and said, oh, that's big, I'm leaving and I'm going to go get that big.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that makes perfect sense. And
Sometimes that's all it is. It just, think of them on the basic, just survival, animalistic method you can, and then you're like, wait a minute, that's easy, just kind of dumb it down a little bit for yourself.
Just don't overthink it.
Yeah, we tell people all the time, stop overthinking.
No, don't overthink it. Just step back and look at the animal, observe what the animal's doing, and usually the answer will come to you,
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, well, yeah, my animal isn't wanting to breed. Why is that? Well, it has no threat. Or
Right.
my animal isn't eating as much anymore. Well, that could be because you're feeding it the same empty feeder every day, all day. So
Yep.
yeah, it's not getting any enrichment because most reptiles are very instinctual, so they get enrichment off food and breeding and then the environment. So one of those three things has to enrich them to make them want to continue to do what they're doing.
Yeah. I'm glad I got to talk to you guys because that's, and it's not that it is earth-shatteringly different than how other folks are doing it.
No.
It generally kind of falls in the same lines. And then you
Right.
have some very specific things for your stuff. And then I don't know, it just kind of fits with my philosophy. So it was kind of biased, but like you guys you're very, yeah, this makes sense. You observed something and you reacted to it and had good results. And you're, to me, everything that you have said has been very observational, and you got this result and then you moved based on the result. Yeah, I love that.
And then it's ever evolving. I mean, if something comes out, every once in a while I'll look into some of the newer supplements that are coming out, and I may end up finding a new supplement other than our supplement schedules we use now, and then I'll start recommending that. But it hasn't happened yet. But I don't want to stay static, like I say, I learned a lot of stuff from an old school guy, and some of my methods are old school, as in, day mistings, but it works. It's proven to work.
Yeah.
The outcome speaks for itself. I mean, we have healthy, thriving babies with healthy urates. They're active. They're actively feeding. We already got them actively reproducing. So, and producing viable eggs. And I mean, so it's speaking for itself in the fact that a little old school isn't necessarily bad,
Yep.
but some new school isn't necessarily bad either, like the light upgrades.
The new bulbs, yeah.
The light upgrades, and then the supplementation. I don't use pink Repcal anymore. I use Repcal, but I use the green label no D3. So it's just plain calcium. That gets fed 6 days a week. And then 1 day a week, we feed the Repashy Calcium Plus Low D because it has preformed vitamin A and a low dose, low IU of synthetic D3.
Yep.
And the only reason why I offer that is for the fat soluble vitamin A and the B complex vitamins in there, just in case something is lacking in my gut load. And the synthetic D3 is there as a safety net. It's not necessarily there to give the chameleon its D3 requirements. That's what the bulb is there for.
Right.
But that's just something that, if a Facebook group heard that, they would lose their mind.
Yeah, because
it's not.
Some want you to do it twice a month.
Once a week, basically, is a death sentence on a Facebook group's mind.
And so I'm looking at the concentration of this dust. And then you put that dust in there with a dozen crickets and you shake it around. How much of that IUs is actually of D3 getting on that one cricket?
Right.
You're not getting the 20,000 IUs
That the bottle
that the bottle says of the D3. You're
Right.
getting a percentage of that 20,000 IUs on that one cricket, so you're not overdoing it at that schedule. You're
Yep.
still with a very safe parameter to where the chameleon's not going to develop any edema, any fluid buildup, any liver issues. We've done whole life cycles, 2-3 generations with the supplementation schedule without any liver issues, any edema issues.
That's awesome.
And it just works, I mean, and that's from observing the animals and adjusting over time, and trying to figure out something simple that will work so it's not complicated. Because when we first got into it, yes, it was complicated because we were getting flooded with 1,000 people's opinions, and so you got to step back and you got to, all right, go to basics and then move up from there. If you want to do a basic setup when you get a chameleon from us, and then grow your setup from there.
Right.
Add the live plants if you want to. I don't think live plants are bad. I personally don't want to take care of them. I don't have a green thumb. And so this works out better for me, and I can keep live plants alive outside the enclosures because I'm not worried about overwatering them.
Or under lights or over lights or
fertilizers and this and that, and I get to keep my chameleons clean, happy, healthy, and the right humidity without having to take care of the plant in their enclosure.
Right.
But some people love the wild jungle look, and that's great as long as you can meet the requirements. So you always want your basking spot at around the mid 80s. You want a UVB index of 3 to 3.5 at the top branch. And then you'll want some shaded areas, and you'll want stepped levels down to where they can step down on UVB and step down on temperature, and then get out of it completely if they want to.
Yeah. All very simple.
Right. Right.
And it's a lot, but it's simple.
Right.
Right.
It's a lot, I guess, to take in all at once. That's the reason why she wrote up the care sheet.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like she broke it down well enough to where it's not so overwhelming to somebody when they read it.
For sure.
I'm working on one now that's going to be an extension of the care sheet, because of all the Facebook groups. And it's, I'm basically answering every single question that I have seen asked by either a customer of ours or just a random person. And
Cool.
it's going to break it. I'm calling it like beyond the basics, and this is where it's going to get intense, but it's going to just point blank tell them. And when I say that, I'm not going to tell you, like we had told James and Katie, I'm not going to tell you just yes or no. I'm going to tell you yes and why, and no and why.
Right.
Okay.
You don't need to have any nighttime heat on your chameleon, even if they can't see the light. They need to cool down at night so their body can fully shut down. And if you have a heat emitter on them, they're never going to get to shut down.
Right.
And I'm not going to just tell you, no, you can't use it. I'm going to tell you why too.
Right.
And that's the education part of how we are, is I'm not just going to tell you yes or no. I'm going to tell you why.
Right. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yes or no doesn't answer the question.
No, it doesn't. That doesn't.
That is an answer, but not an answer to the question. And
Right.
I feel like an answer to the question is more important than just a yes or no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people out there, yes and no. Well, why?
Yeah.
And if you step back and you start asking why,
most of the time they can't answer.
Right.
And they get banned.
And then they start questioning. So now you're questioning me, so I'm kicking you off the group.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not that I'm questioning you.
It's just, can you give me a reason?
I want more information.
Yeah.
On or why yes, why no, or only this way. And I can't ever get an answer.
It's because they don't have it. You know, they're following someone's narrative that, you know, put them in charge that also can't answer it. So we just get banned.
Yeah.
It sounds very familiar.
Yeah.
Because most everything I told you about, I have an answer for why. You know, just like mealworms. Mealworms, the reason why I say no is they're high in the chitin, which I had the discussion about the chitin, but the problem is they do not gut load well.
Yeah.
You can leave that thing on a carrot or any kind of gut load I feed them, and they just don't consume enough material versus the fat and chitin that they have. So nutritionally, they are poor all around, even gut.
It's basically a hard Twinkie.
Yeah, I've found the exact same thing. They don't eat enough for the process to work correctly.
Right. But if you'll take a leafy fresh piece of mustard green and put it in a superworm bin, leave it for an hour or two and come back, there's nothing left.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, it's a significant difference.
Yeah.
You know, like 100 worms. And I'm like, okay, yep, those.
And superworms are cheap too, you know. It's like we just need to stop feeding mealworms. They're useless.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that is, you know, just a super basic observation. But yeah, it's just the rate that they eat doesn't fit what we all need. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and then like what else is there? The waxworms.
Yeah.
Waxworms are just fat. That's all they are.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're looking to add fat, just
and then
do some dubias or
every time I've tried to gut load a waxworm, it seems like it never eats anything.
Yeah, same.
So I was like, okay, well, let's try these black soldier fly grubs. So I grabbed the black soldier fly grubs, even though they say I don't have to gut load them. I'm gonna gut load.
I gut load everything, yeah.
So I put food in there and they destroy it. And I'm like, okay, that will work.
Yeah, literally, I put a sweet potato in there and I pulled it out. And I'm not kidding you, it looked like a lace item, like a lace handkerchief. You know, it was all pretty intricate lace. You know, and I'm like, okay, these things can gut load.
Yeah, they eat for real.
Yeah. Right.
So we are cruising past 2 hours, which is crazy.
Didn't feel like
we can yak all day.
So before I wrap things up, I do want to say that in the chat, we had several people come in and say that they bought chameleons from you, which I thought was really cool. And very specifically, the people who commented said that they all were commenting about how healthy their chameleons were, which I thought was really cool because it wasn't like, oh, I got a red one or like I got the big one or whatever. Like they were commenting that they got healthy animals. And it was more than one person that came to comment that. I thought that was really awesome. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that before I wrap things up.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was very cool.
That means a lot.
That's our goal.
Yeah. So where can people find you to find all this awesome chameleon information?
So everything is under Readys Rainforest. So Facebook, Readys Rainforest, Instagram, Readys Rainforest, and then the website, readysrainforest.com.
Cool.
None of those little underscores and all that stuff. I was lucky enough to grab it all up.
Nice. Yep. So for those folks who are listening to the podcast as opposed to watching here on Facebook or YouTube, I will put a link to the website in the show notes if you are getting it on a regular podcast app, or if you look at it on the Facebook page, it will be in the little comment section with a link to the website. So that was awesome. I really appreciate you guys coming on, and I am glad that the Texas folks recommended you as their resident chameleon nerds.
Hey,
yep, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. That's the goal here: is healthy, easy animals.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming on.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Thank you for having us.
Oh yeah.
If you ever
sure.
want to talk to us again, we're always here.
Very cool. Okay. Good night.
Good night.
That was awesome. I am so glad that the folks at Reptile Gumbo and the folks on the Herp circuit recommended them. I was already kind of social media stalking them to check out their stuff when the Reptile Gumbo folks told me about them, and it was really cool. I love that they give out their recipe for their dry gut load. They have bunches of pictures of doing different stuff with gut loads on different insects. They kind of photo document a lot of the different things that they do, which is really cool. And I think the sterile method that they use is really neat. I was personally kind of fascinated to see that because that's not how I'm used to seeing chameleons set up. And then I watched her video where she set it up. It was very involved. She explained everything, worked through it step by step. She did a really good job just talking through how and why they do what they do. And I thought that was amazing. So I'm really glad they came on to talk about it, and they're having great success with it. So that's really cool to see. I'd like that they are debating the nighttime fogging thing. I personally like the idea for the nighttime fogging, but I think it's cool that their debate isn't that it's bad. Their debate point was that it happens in a different time of year in Madagascar. And so I thought that was really cool because it doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong or bad or what have you. It just means that maybe that could be a seasonal thing that you do, or you pick. It allows for more options, I think, as opposed to a yes or a no. Kind of like they were saying, like not yes or no, but why. I thought it was really cool how he looked at that, and that he thought of it as a time of year issue, not a bad hydration or what have you. That was a very cool perspective. So, as you guys know, I missed an episode in March. That was actually my birthday, and I was driving back from Illinois from Kansas. So, craziness on the road, as evidenced by the fact that I am in a hotel room and have a completely different background than normal. I once again am traveling for work. I have everything set for the next couple of episodes, so we should be good. But the next episode you see me will be in a different hotel room. And then the episode after that will probably be this hotel room again. So lots of different stuff going on. Yeah, but that was the cause of the missed episode there. As always, wait, can I get my hand in place there? BlackBox cages. I just got my stack of 4-foot enclosures, which I'm super stoked to get set up and put together because I'm actually planning out some of the VivTech things and trying to use different lighting and heating and UV spots. So I want to experiment with some of that and show you guys what it is that I was talking about. So that should be a lot of fun. And then, speaking of VivTech, I actually have a code with them, which was kind of neat. Erica gave that to me after the episode we did together. And it's Lizard Brain, all one word, capitalized, 23. So 2023, obviously. Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. I enjoy their stuff, and I'm using it to really good effect with my desert things that need high UV. And I'm going to start to experiment more with my turtles and things like that. I have them on a few turtle species, and they bask super well with those. So I've been enjoying that, but I'm gonna add to that. Our facility is a little bit bigger than probably most people's, so it's a little bit harder for me to buy like 20 of those at one time. So we're slowly increasing the turtle basking from one type of UV to another, but we have a lot. So equipment changes or technology changes for us are a little more expensive. So we do them kind of piecemeal. Same thing with, BlackBox. I love their stuff, and I'm converting a lot of my stuff to their enclosures. But as you guys have heard me talk about, Teresa and myself and the family, it's a lot of animals. So those enclosure conversions come in sections where my wallet can handle them. So yeah, it takes a little bit of time, but I'm having a great time with it. I really love talking to them and seeing the stuff that they're coming up with has been really cool. Actually, just the stack of the 4-footers that I have is a different height, and so the actual layout of the enclosure is a little weird, but it allowed me to do more in the stack and still stop at 6 feet high. So for me, when I'm trying to show people in the facility, I don't want to go above 6 feet just because an average person my height, like holding a little kid, they can still show them the high up things. So that our considerations are a little different than most folks probably, but the stuff that BlackBox was doing has really helped us with that, which is pretty cool. Yeah. So I will see you guys all again in 2 weeks. Later.